Hey, I'm live. Nice to be here. Whether you're here or not, maybe some people will join. It's Sunday, not Saturday. Normally do this at 11 o'clock on Saturday, but it was the No Kings rally yesterday, and so I decided to shift it to Sunday. We'll see who joins. Nice to be here with you, whoever joins. I went yesterday. Hey, Jeff, great to see you. Thank you for making it on an off day. Um, uh, Let me know your ideas. What have you been thinking about this week? That's what I want to do in this group is play with your ideas. I play with mine all the time, and it's a big joy for me. I have lots of conversational partners, lots of debating partners, but I remain my favorite. Been thinking a little bit about that. Just yesterday, I had a thought. Let me see if I can remember it. It's related to the how the Dunning-Kruger effect is not as smart as it thinks it is, because it doesn't pay much attention to what it's like to be introspective. And hello, Fun Monster. Good to see you here. It's really great to have you both here. Let me see if I can get this idea clear. So as I get older, I get more calm and more accepting of who I turned out to be. Um, but I remain a mystery to myself, which is an interesting pairing. The idea that I could be both more calm about who I am and more introspectively curious. Um, and how that works, how you get to that place. Um, so far, I can't think of how you get there other than through a slow process of enormment. Um, and as I've mentioned before, my situation was lucky for introspection because at the age of 8, I started 4-day-a-week psychoanalysis on the couch. Um, that's right. You're not as frightened by what you don't know you don't know. That is, I remain a mystery to myself, and I also have gained a curiosity about that mystery. It's not like I just say, well, yeah, I work in mysterious ways. Or is it the other end of the spectrum where you say, no, I know myself? My favorite line, it actually irritates the shit out of me. It's don't tell me how I feel. I know how I feel. Like it's obvious that every human being it knows how they feel. Obviously, we feel lots of things. We we have greatest intimacy with what we feel, but at the same time, we have the most bias, the most self-reporting bias. There's lots of things we wouldn't want to see about ourselves. Um, so how you get there is interesting to me. And I had 5 years starting at age 8 of psychoanalysis, and I really didn't like looking at myself. And then I did another 5 years, 4 days a week at age 35. I mean, it was an extremely slow and expensive way to get to a place of introspection. So it's almost like cheating. But I've long been interested in how to speed that process up, how to make it more efficient. I don't think that mindfulness meditation does it. I wish it did because it's cheap and anybody can do it. All you need is a place to sit your ass down, um, and a timer maybe. But I'm not sure it imposes much constraint on how you feel about yourself. Maybe it's a little like a drug state, in which case it's garbage in, garbage out. That is, I do not assume, as some people do, that that um, that drug states bring you greater awareness because of a problem I call feelality, which is that or feelism. It's like the false assumption that the more intense your feelings are, the more you're seeing raw truth. And I've had fabulous experiences around that and drugs. I think I might have told you about one. I did an ayahuasca meeting uh, thing where we about 18 of us sat in a yurt together and did ayahuasca, and we took turns towards the end singing songs, people who had songs to sing. And this one guy got up and he sang not great and played guitar. And afterwards, we were talking. He said, "Yeah, I came in with a question." He said, "Yeah, I came in with this question about whether I should study psychology or try to be a professional musician." And I said, "So what did it tell you?" And it told me I should be a professional musician. I have some experience in the music world. It's not easy to make any money that way. I think the guy was kidding himself. So that's garbage in, garbage out. And I think there might be that same problem with meditation. The meditation doesn't, it may be an altered state, and it may give you feelings, but they'll feel like revelation, like you're seeing the truth. Like those people who take drugs and say, I saw the world unbiased. They say that while about an experience in which they had intense emotions, biasing how they see things. Anyway, so I'm still looking for how you would pull that off, how you would get to the place that Jeff just described, the one where you're saying, where you're not as frightened by what you don't know, you don't know. Um, yeah, yeah, Jeff. I don't know Joe Rogan's DMT story, but it might be like that. I don't know. And there was a book by Michael Pollan, um, about drug experiences, and to me, it was nonsense. He thinks he saw reality. Exactly the kind of melodrama. And just think about the history of it. It is actually the history of woke, generically defined. It's the history of revelation, the assumption humans have that if they get in the right state of mind, or if someone did, the truth is simply revealed to them. And in general, it's a liberating feeling. So I have this curiosity these days about breakthroughs, epiphanies, revelations. Um, what are they breaking through? They're breaking through doubt. Um, in my experience doing that, he saw reality. Hey, Nils, great to have you here. Yeah, in the psychoanalysis, it wasn't like that. The guy didn't talk. I can't remember a single thing he said to me. This was old school Freudian psychoanalysis, starting at God, what the age of it was 1960s, mid 60s at best. And no, I'd go downtown to this guy's office, and I'd sit there. I'd lie there on his leather couch, and he'd sit behind me. He was behind my head, and he didn't talk, but I kind of had audience. It'd be interesting to hear some recordings of that. It was my neurotic mind running, but I would also fall asleep a lot. Partly because I'm a little narcoleptic anyway. When I need a nap, I need a nap, and I go take one. I'm an incredibly efficient napper, and I'm grateful for that. I've had some insomnia lately. I went to bed 11:30 the other night and didn't fall asleep till 5:30. My mind was just running. I wasn't anxious about anything but the fact that I was losing all that sleep. But I didn't need to be that anxious because actually I can take a nap. My life is such that I can take a nap any time of the day I need to. And I fall on a bed and I sleep for 10 minutes and I wake up drooling and fully refreshed. So, but I did a lot of sleeping on the couch, expensive sleeping. But little by little, I got to where I could look and laugh nervously. And then a little later, I got to where I could actually laugh because I don't know myself. I wouldn't pretend. You'll never hear me say, I think. Once again, I wouldn't know for sure. Um, don't take my word for it. I'd be the last to know if I actually this, I I make a point of trying to never say anything that's like, "Don't tell me how I feel. I know how I feel," because obviously folks don't always know how they feel or want to share how they really feel. And why would I be an exception? Anyway, so we've got some people here, and I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear your ideas. I've had plenty this week, but this is really a chance for us to play with ideas, and and yours would be fun. So let's do that. And play is what it's about. It's serious play. It's dire irony. It's dironic, in that we take the ideas seriously. We strip them all of their rhetorical quality. So one thing that I think is really important in this work is being able to strip that off. So we've got positive ease, negative ease, and neutral ease. Positive ease is where you pump an idea up. Negative ease is where you put it, you diminish or demote an idea. And neutral ease is just trying to look at it plainly. So all the stuff where you quote a famous person as saying something, and that's rhetoric, or the meme quality is rhetoric. And I'm saying, no, get good at stripping that off and looking at an idea for an idea's sake, really kicking the tires on it. And in a way that's also related to the introspection, because people are proud of their ideas. You hear it in their voices. You certainly hear it in mine, which is just almost a giddiness in declaring one's opinion. That's feelality, and it's really funny and really normal. I get this giddy sound in my voice. When we are young, we value others people's opinion of us very seriously. As we age, we value our own opinion more. I think that helps us look at ourselves more clearly. Beautiful. That's a great idea to play with. Let's play with that for a second. It came up last session, this idea about how much to care about other people's opinions. And some of us, I think you'd agree with me on this, Fun Monster, which is that some of us care less about other people's opinions and in a way don't get more introspective. And others do get more introspective. But you're right. From my perspective, you relax a little bit, and then you keep your own counsel on whose counsel to keep. You're not as indiscriminate about whose opinions matter to you. There is a popular notion out there that you shouldn't care about what other people think. Trumpists love that one. And they care very much about what other people think, but they claim to be independent voters who do their own research. And no, I don't buy that that's the case for them. So this is a really interesting question to me. How do you gain what I've called introspective intelligence, the capacity to doubt yourself? I don't think we've mastered that one either. I don't think there's an easy, efficient way to do it. I also have known people who got through 8 years of psychoanalysis. I didn't graduate the first time or the second time. But I do know people who have graduated from it, and yeah, it just ended up being jerks. So, and they were very proud of it, of having mastered psychoanalysis. So it's a really interesting question. Opinions are like underwear. Do they fit or not? That is the question. I will say that is the question, and I think it's a bit of a problem. So one way to look at an idea is to look at the upside of it and the downside of it. That's another way of dealing with the neutral ease, is that you counterpose, you cross-fertilize between the good qualities of an idea and the bad qualities of an idea. So why are opinions like underwear? I've recently switched to bamboo briefs and like them. They're more comfortable for me. They fit better, or they accommodate me more. And that is the question that drives us. But I don't think it's the right question, because actually, so what I'm saying is that if you look at what we are as evolved organisms, and you start with the origins of life, as my research does, what you discover is that we live primarily for comfort in our own skin, for underwear that fits. I also like this about your idea, which is that it's underwear. You're not actually sharing what you really think. Your opinions are public presentations of something that makes you feel comfortable. So it's like underwear that way. And I'll have another sartorial comment about this hat in just a minute. So ideas fit us. They may not fit reality. This is one of the just fundamental things we're up against. Here's how I think of it. There are 3 kinds of stories. There's the likely story, what's actually true about reality. There's the likable story, the story that makes us feel most comfortable in our underwear. And then there's the locally liked story. And the relationship between them is interesting. To me, the likely story is the one that we have to pay the most attention to. I hold no God higher than reality. And my aim is to hold no idea, no God higher than reality, not even myself. But because we have to be realistic, or we die. I mean, that's the one thing you get from all of evolutionary history. If there's one thing we learn from all that evolutionary history, if there's one rule that applies across the entire evolutionary game, it's adapt to reality or die. But in the short term, that doesn't feel like the ultimate, the goal. The most pressing goal is feeling comfortable in our underwear. And I'm sure you've all had the experience of uncomfortable underwear. It's not fun, it's distracting. Introspective ideas where you doubt yourself can be uncomfortable, like the wrong underwear. Okay, so you've got the long-term priority is the likely story, reality itself. The short-term priority is comfort in our own skin. So the long-term reality is the likely story. The immediate pressure is the likable story, the story you like. And then in between, you've got this weird thing, which is the locally liked story, which is kind of a go-between between the two, in that your parents teach you about reality, like how to cross the street safely, that sort of thing. But they also fill your mind with all sorts of locally liked stories, which are just a bunch of people's likable stories. So you might have a religious parent who teaches you a bunch of claptrap about how God loves you special, that kind of thing. The key is figuring out what reality is. Yes. And here's an interesting thought about reality that I'm going to get to my hat because I said I was going to get to that. We disagree about reality. Humans will always disagree about reality. Darwin described his theory as the beginning of one long argument. I think it is a theory about one long argument. Arguments have been going on since the origins of life. That is, there's competition. They're not arguments in the conceptual realm. That's a human thing. Dogs don't even have that, but they will snarl at each other. They will have one long argument. And so there's that, but at the same time, I don't think there's much argument about what reality is. That is, we'll debate what reality contains, but we don't debate the container. The container is anything that we feel or think, depending, will fuck you up if you ignore it, or anything that will benefit you if you ignore it. I'm a pragmatist. That's what we call this kind of belief in philosophy, is we don't get lost in this question about whether we can know reality at all, or even whether there is a reality. A lot of people say, no, really, there is no reality, which is, of course, funny. But we'll debate it, but we're debating potential threats and missed opportunities. And that's because our interaction, nonetheless, whether there's a reality or not, our interactions or our behaviors have consequences for us. So I don't assume I could know reality itself beyond my capacity to interpret it, but my capacity to interpret it matters a lot to my outcome. Let's see. The key is figuring out what reality is. That's a good rule. So my point is that we're not debating the container. There are people who say God is real. I'm not one of them. And what they mean by that is God will fuck you up if you ignore him. And if you haven't heard the bluegrass tune, He'll Fuck You Up, go listen to it. It's wonderful. It's a religious sounding spoof song where he's talking about God will fuck you up. All right. So more ideas, please, if you've got them. I've got some. Let me talk about this hat for a second. I like this hat. I bought it from a company called Dad Hats. And at this point in my science research group, um, people wear them. I've been giving them, even though they're kind of expensive. They're like $35. Not that expensive. They're well made. Um, but why do I like this hat so much? Because I'm multi-level headed. Um, and and when I say that I'm multi-level headed, what I mean is that I've got layers of constraint on my head. So a hat contains and constrains my thinking. And then I have other hats constraining that thinking. Because I think of evolution or natural history as the accretion, the accumulation of constraints. I'm nothing but physics, but not just any physics. It's not anything goes in my body. The most fundamental container I have on me is my body. That is, I have to keep it going in order to be alive. But then I've got my emotional constraints, all the do more of that, don't do more of that, feeling stuff, what we call hedonic tone. I once worked with a professional hedonist. He had a PhD in hedonics, is what they called it. He was the guy who had invented the Frappuccino. He was a guy who worked in how to bring out pleasure in eating. He was a food scientist. And I had come up with this idea for flavored baby carrots. I have this fascination with neutral substrates and how you can move them from savory to sweet or vice versa. So, for example, I thought, why not having chicken flavored baby carrots? Why not have chocolate flavored baby carrots? I've made chocolate French fries. So there's a little fascination from a time when I thought maybe I'd invent something too. I'm over that. But anyway, he worked in hedonics. He was gonna help me figure out how to make flavored carrots. We gave up on it. He said it would cost me $50,000 to do the research with him, and so we gave up. Anyway, hedonic tone. So I got my body, and then I got my hedonic tone, which is my feelings, and then I've got my conceptual capacity, and each of them is a series of constraints that limit what I think, what I do, all of that. So coming back to underpants, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the hedonic tone, the feeling side of things. And I think feelings drive so much of what we do, and that words are kind of thin overlay on top of that. You can make careful effort, but it's not the default. The default is, what do you get when you cross intense, convincing feelings with words? Well, you'd get words that would calm the feelings. That's what you'd get. That's exactly what you'd get anywhere in the universe. Anywhere there's intelligent life, that is, life that uses language and therefore concepts. That's what you'd get. You'd get organisms that are likely to not jump out of boiling water because they can rationalize it. So rationalizing, moralizing, justifying, each of those words, the ifying or izing aspect of it, is about a kind of a manual effort. It suggests agency. So there's morality, and then there's moralizing. And moralizing is basically about the underwear. It's basically saying, I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel right. And therefore, I will spew whatever words bring me the greatest comfort. The problem is that we lack awareness of how our own feelings affect us. Yes, and that was an interest. So that's an interesting aspect of this. There is a school of thought. What's it called? Focus. Something. You probably heard of this. It shows up in various places. It's the idea. When I was going through my marriage breakup and was in a fairly traumatic state, I started to see one of these psychotherapists. I did it briefly, maybe 3 months or so, who was deep into this. He would say, "How do you feel, Jeremy?" And I'd say, "Well, I feel frustrated that my wife has lost interest." "No, how do you feel?" He'd say. And I'd say, "Oh, well, I feel this tension in my solar plexus." I feel anxiety. That's one way to get at how feelings affect us. I think it's a useful thing to do. Because why? Because of the hat, again. There's my intense feelings, and then there's the capacity to step out of my feelings to observe them. That's what multi-level headedness is about. Getting over and under. So notice I have a thought up here. I have a thought up here. And then I'll have the feeling. So I have to come down out of my thoughts into my feelings, or I have to get underneath them to actually feel what it feels like as a physical sensation. Now, I think there are limits on this. Here's how I think about it. I'm obviously very interested in the consolations of philosophy, but I also feel like there are limits on them. I have to kind of appreciate them. So I think that thoughts, that we can get through philosophy a certain kind of equanimity, but I do not assume that it would help with back pain. I think that physical pain is really hard to overcome. That's what I mean. We need to, they're so fucking convincing. They're just convincing. And when you think about evolution, yeah, they would be convincing. They'd have to be able to motivate us. It's interesting when I describe MAGA Mike to people, because sometimes I have to explain, no, this is satire. I'm a cult psychologist who is playing a guy who's so clueless he doesn't realize he's exposing his own emotional motivations. So we have lots of motivations, but I had to coin the term emotivation for what I think we're dealing with, which is most of our motivations are emotional. So emotivation is the obvious word. We need to find balance. I would suggest actually that the intuitive sense of this, that there's three parts: body, heart, and mind, is what we have to deal with. So body is what I have in common with all organisms, with plants. The fact that I'm, for example, going to be making 330 billion new cells today on a Sunday even. And I'm not conscious of it. I'm not feeling it. I'm not thinking about it. It's just happening automatically. That's body. Heart is the hedonic tone side of it for me. And mind is the language part of me, the conceptual part of me. And I think of these all in a strange loop relationship. Strange loop it's a terrible term for it, and we did come up with a better term, Terry and I did, a few weeks ago through one of my friends who's a PhD chemist who was vice president at Eli Lilly, and he came up with the suggestion, Mobius loops. It would be hard for me to explain why it's a Mobius loop. I think I'll try, but there, once you've got one, that's a Mobius loop, and then another one can accrue on top of it. So you got body, then we have heart, and then we have mind. All of them are in strange loop relationship with each other. So balance is a question, we got words like balance. There's another one that's also popular this way. I'd like it if the word had a little bit more tension in it. Think of it like tightrope walking, or like driving dangerous roads in the dark where you got to balance. There's something missing from balance, or there's something. There's something like it. It's a state you can achieve. I don't think you can achieve it. I think you spend your life in this balancing act. So I'm more likely to say we need to do ongoing work with the tension between body, heart, and mind. And I don't start with the philosophers on body, heart, and mind. I start with this origins of life research and discovered, no, actually, that makes a lot of sense. We've got our vegetative sentience, which I have in common with plants and single-celled organism. That is the work I do, the struggle for existence that I do. Then I've got my hedonic tone, or my neuronal sentience. And then I've got this other thing, which is conceptual, and it's not exactly me. It has all sorts of influence on what I do. Let me give you an example. Santa Claus is not real, but the idea of Santa Claus is real. It has an effect on me. It has an effect on what people do. That's how I know whether something exists, is whether it changes physical work. And yeah, the idea of Santa Claus definitely has that effect. My self-concept does. I might even kill myself for a concept. Lots of people do this throughout history. For example, dying in a war for love of king and country or something like that. It's like identifying with a larger conceptual self, or yeah, a conceived thing that you treat like a self. I don't think that America is a self. I don't think MAGA is a self. It's got lots of qualities in common with a self, but I can identify with the idea of MAGA as if that's my full identity. Okay, I felt great relief when I saw so many people at the protest. Let's talk about that a little bit. Me too. I'm in San Francisco. LA is a little more San Francisco than some places. Here's my question about it. I went dressed up as a founding father. You should see the pictures. I went with my gay friend who was closet gay when we lived on the commune. I haven't seen him in years. But he happened to be going, and we reconnected, and we decided to go together. So there are pictures of me in a three-corner hat and the full outfit. A lot of people stopped me for photographs of me. I felt a little shy at first, but not once I was a celebrity, of course. And we had a great time there. And those pictures are up on Facebook. So if you're not already my Facebook friend, you won't see them. Jeremy Sherman. But not that you need to see them. Here's my issue. Why I remain productively dissatisfied. Do you know the name H.L. Mencken? He was an important journalist back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. I adore him. He was a Nazi sympathizer. He was a conservative. He was very anti-FDR. And I have a special vested interest in FDR because I was fiancéed to FDR's great-granddaughter. I used to go to Roosevelt reunions back when we were together. Wonderful person, just wonderful. And I'm a major fan of what FDR pulled off in his presidency. But I still love H.L. Mencken. He was very gifted with words, and I study how he was gifted with words. He's also one of the guys who poked big holes in the Christian Puritanistic aspect of the American society. Holes that I think we are dealing with the revenge for. You remember the Scopes trial? He was one of the big journalists on it. He was there for the Scopes trial, the monkey trial, whether we descended from apes. And they were bested badly. They were bested. Those evangelicals were bested. I think we're dealing with their revenge. It's worth noting that we don't win final battles. The United States is currently fighting a war against everyone it beat: the monarchists, the racists, the anti-communists. They're all back. Or the anti-fascists. The fascists are back. Okay. So sorry, this is a long walk to what I want to get to. He said about news, he said that man bites dog is news. Dog bites man is not news. So this is my concern. This is why I remain unsatisfied by these marches. It's the usual suspects doing the usual thing. And part of me expected that there would be more conflict, more violence, because the Trump administration is now moving fast and hard, aggressively. So I thought they might actually confront us. And once they do, I do not know how we will respond. In a way, we are really primed for anti-fascism, because we're so not used to it, all of these constraints on us. At the same time, we're not used to actual fighting. So I made a meme this week in which an old guy says, I can't believe I have to risk my life for this stuff again, for this bullshit again. This country's not used to it. I have no idea what happens once they kill a Stephen Colbert, or once they kill anybody, or once he actually brings the full Putin repertoire to the United States. I do not know whether we'll keep on fighting, because we're not used to that either. I mean, I'm trying to keep up, and there's there was the French resistance fighters, and I think about them as who I might end up having to be. And I'm totally unprepared for it. I mean, I've shot a gun a few times. Okay, so that there were so many, I'm still waiting to see what the summary of it is, but also notice that the Trumpists didn't come out full force, at least not in the stories I've read so far. And Trump has been dismissive of it. So this is kind of a way to gauge whether or not we're having an impact. I'll be very interested to see what happens to the polls after this. I think the fact that there were so many people will empower others in position to do something about the administration. It's a possibility. And it's also possibly comfortable on underwear. And I want to live with that tension. I don't disagree with it. It's very, very heartening to see all those folks out. And a lot of them look like squares. It wasn't the usual suspects, the pink hat liberals. There were plenty of them there. I'm in San Francisco. But there were also people who looked more straightforward. And I wish that at ours we sang the Star-Spangled Banner, or I pledge allegiance to the flag. If we had shouted some of that stuff, that would have been a little more newsy. And it's one of the reasons why I dressed up as one of the founding fathers and had a sign that said, I had a scroll and said, kings ain't our thing. Kangs ain't our thing. Or I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, let's see. I don't want to be optimistic. I don't want to be pessimistic. What I really don't want to be is pessimistic, which is rolling up in a ball and ignoring reality. I'm trying to stay dissatisfied that what we're doing is good, but maybe not as good as we could do. That's the kind of challenge I'm struggling with. I did start a new video series this week, and it's going well. It's bringing out more MAGA people than my other, and it's funny that it is. So MAGA Mike, who you've probably seen, he's mostly responded to by liberals, despite me trying to keyword it in the direction of MAGA people, because I'm trying to basically make fun of them right on the edge, where they kind of resonate with it and kind of don't. But I mostly hear from liberals and people who say, is this a spoof? Because I'm trying to play it right on the edge. And then I started this new series, Words to Try on Trumpies. And I've had all these theories. We have the Sunday study group that meets and comes up with different ideas. And I'm also seeing all these liberals respond to MAGA Mike as if he's real. And I'm not impressed with what they're saying. I can channel MAGA Mike enough to know that they could blow it off, that they would dismiss that. So this new series, Words to Try on Trumpies, is going well, and it's bringing out more MAGA people. So I get even more chances to try, because I feel like I just need a lot of practice talking to these guys to figure out how to do it. And I realized yesterday, I'm still responding too much to what they say. And that's a win for them, because what they're looking for is frame dominance. They want to be the one who decides what we're talking about. So it feels productive and valuable, and it's another daily short that I can produce. More ideas. Come on, you guys. What I'm asking for, notice that we're covering all sorts of ground here, or spreading ourselves across all sorts of ground, which means that we can talk about anything that's on your mind. one of the things about this work as I do it is that it's all the same, regardless of the arena in which we're talking about. Whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about sex, whether we're talking about partnership, whether we're talking about just whatever, it's all human stuff. So everything becomes sacred text. You can pore over everything looking for what it means. And I have found that valuable in so many ways. It keeps me engaged. When I'm talking to someone who we're not connecting, it's just not happening, I can always switch into a kind of an anthropological role, um, where I at least get to study what a human does. And I'm doing that with me too. I'm studying how I respond to different things, which is what we were talking about earlier. Um, and so, yeah, everything becomes sacred text. You can have um, any idea at all about any subject, and just pitch it here so we can play with it. That's what I'm hoping we do here. Um, let's see. There were plenty of ideas this week, and I am an addict to ideas. Um, and for me, an idea is usually a conflict between two ideas, attention again. So I give attention to a tension, um, because they're the most interesting places to play. And in a way, when you resolve to an idea, when you declare an opinion, you're done thinking. That's kind of the point. So, yeah, there were lots this week. Here's an example of one. I'm thinking about. I name. Sometimes I'll simply name something I need to think about more. And one of the thoughts I've had maybe a year ago was the neo-feral human, or what is neo-feral? So feral is you were domesticated and now you're put out in the wild. Um, Sometimes it's used as someone who was never domesticated, but humans are highly domesticated and we are losing that domestication. The Trumpists are extremely feral. They are talking more like the animals we are. Um, they're braying, they're making word noises. So it's a different kind of feral because it's playing in the medium of language, but it's still animal braying. And they're kind of super duper predators because of it. So the reason I'm so dissatisfied with Trumpies, I'll give you an example. Is one of my friends on Facebook saw one of my uh, word to try on Trumpies and said, that won't work. And I said, I agree, it won't work. Now, are you ready for the next question, or do you just want to feel complacent in your proud authority that won't work? Because the next question is this. A Trumpist, like any absolutist or asshole, their sole goal is for nothing to work. That's the whole point for them, is that nothing will work. Nothing will get through to them. That's the original definition of absolutism. It's uninfluenceable, incorrigible, literally uncorrectable. So, so the next question is, how do you engage with them? And how do you engage with people there's no talking to? How do you humbly humble or humiliate humans who will say or do anything to avoid the human humility of any receptivity? Remember, the Trumpists have declared holy war as the easiest, cheapest, cheesiest way to feel good about yourself, which is anybody who disagrees with me is evil. And I can do anything I want with them, starting with not listening to them. That is, the fact that you disagree with me means that I have pre-closed the door. I will not listen to you because you are a fool, you are evil, you are weak, whatever. And so this is what we're dealing with, and this is neo-feralism. This is what we're going to get now. And again, I don't care about the lifestyle brand that much. I mean, I think as a candidate for king, Trump is a bad start because he's such a total douche. I mean, like a 24/7 asshole, just incredible. It's not a convincing argument for monarchy. He said today, by the way, I'm no king. Fine. This is the thing about them that's just astonishing. Really worth noticing that with them, their freedom is freedom from consequences. And chief among them is no matter how bad you are, no matter how immoral you are, you still retain full, absolute moral authority. That's what's going on with them. That's the most amazing thing about them. The quantity of shaming they tried on me this week, just fascinating. Like for insulting them, you know, this sense you get from them that they will never enter a debate. They're too much pussy wimps for that. No, they have to play the authority, the judge, the supreme judge who decides in the debate. So, okay. Uh, I haven't seen that video yet. He posted in response. I am guessing that it works just fine for these people. We called Reagan a Teflon president. Well, all MAGA people are pure Teflon. That's what they are. They're just, nothing sticks. Nothing sticks. That's what absolutism is. So I haven't seen that yet, but if you've got any content from it, lay it on us because that'd be interesting for us to see. I'm guessing it's dismissive as if the whole thing's beneath him. And still the polls show him doing way better than he should be. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. So anyway, here's a thought I had this week about the Neil Farrell question. And it relates to the hat. Him dressed as a king flying a jet dropping feces on the protesters. Okay. Yeah. No, so you don't have to have a majority. You just have to have a very enthusiastic minority. And all of these people are addicted to herobotism. And so I can see how that would play for him just fine. And a bunch of Americans are already showing signs that they won't put up a fight against it because we've become a very docile very docile society. I don't know why neighbor came in there. Anyway, here's the thought I had about it. So remember, I'm multi-level headed, or I think we are multi-level headed. These strange loop relationships between body, feeling, and mind. And one way to think about the strange loop is alternating dominance. I can have thoughts that stir my emotions and keep my body awake at night. I can have body sensations that fill my mind with thoughts, anxious thoughts. That's what we're talking about. Alternating dominance, checks in balance. That's what you mean by trying to balance them, Jeff. That's what I think we're talking about. Is they're trying to keep them in check with each other, so that the hats contain each other. The big hat actually contains the little hat, and the little hat actually contains the big hat. That's a strange loop relationship. But once you have language, you are multi-level headed. That is, you can think up notches one after another. That is, you can always up level out of whatever you're talking about to talk about something about it. Aboutness is something that you get at the origins of life. That is, any organism's response is about its environment. And so it's aboutness is actually representation. I don't want to get too technical here, but anyway, so you got that basic kind of aboutness, and then you got the emotional aboutness, which was Freud's big thing, which is to realize that what he called the pleasure principle, which is that feelings are evolved capacity in animals to motivate, to emotivate adaptive behavior. And then you've got, at a higher level, you've got your capacity for language, which is in humans, higher and lower, because I can actually breathe my way out of an anxious thought sometimes, not always. And I don't think I can breathe my way out of back pain. I don't assume so. So what do you get with Neil Farrell? Well, you get a collapse of levels. So what you actually lose is introspection. Try this out. This was one of the earliest ideas I ever had. It had to do with reading something by Dan Dennett about orders of inference. Orders of inference is if I said, he said that she thinks that they thought that that he was, at some point you kind of lose sight of all of those orders of inference. Now apply that to introspection and you get basically 4 levels. And at the time I called them, I was just starting to play with words, I to the 0th power, I to the 1st power, second, I squared, and I to the infinite power. I to the 1st power is me I to the 0th power is just me being. It's my physical, emotional self. But with language, I can go to I to the 1st power, which is telling unexamined stories about who I am. So I could say, I'm a nice guy. I'm a people person, whatever. I can say something, okay? I squared is my ability to tell a story about the teller of that story. So if I said, I like to think that I'm a good guy, that's introspection. It's out a level. It's me stepping out of myself to see myself telling a story. And I to the infinite power is recognizing that for every story you tell about yourself, another could be told about the teller of that story. So what do we see in neo-feral humans? We see the disappearance of those higher levels to where all you've got is I am, thank you, Ramdas. Tell me the connection you're making to what I said. Ramdas was a personal friend. I got to hang out with that boy. It's fascinating and fun. He was a very fun guy. He's the last of the spiritual gurus I spent any time with. He was pivotal in getting me out of the psychoanalysis I was in. Something he said just really knocked me out. He told you that you were a good guy. Exactly. Right. Okay. So what he's doing when he did that is on my mind this week, because that's what I'm trying in MAGA Mike and in Words to Try on Trumpies. I'm trying to hold a mirror up to them. 2 ways. One is the direct way, where I'm just very blunt with them, my observations from the outside. And the other is where I act like them. And I really find the MAGA Mike thing both easy to make, fun to make, and effective. It's a very important technique, is to act like them and also not do it in a way that's just pure sarcasm. It's got to be parody on the edge, what I call clone to own. You act like them, but you expose what's really going on with them. And I hope it makes them uncomfortable. But yes, for those who don't know this story, one time I went to him very anxious about what to do with my life. This was in the middle of my first midlife crisis. I managed to squeeze in 2 before I hit 65, and then I had 1 post-midlife crisis too. Very good for an anxious boy to do that. And I'm getting better at them, I think. Who knows? If I get back pain, I might be terrible at them. But anyway, he said to me, "You're a really good guy, aren't you?" And he said it right there on the edge, and it was a great confrontation. It was really good for me. So that's what Jeff is referring to. That's the MAGA Mike effect. That's the Words to Try on Trumpy effects. And yeah, so I think there's a lot in that. And so what I'm saying is that the Trumpists have degenerated down to where they're only at the level of I to the 1st power. I'm a good guy. I'm a patriot. I'm MAGA. And our effort is to try to get them to be able to see themselves. Obviously, this relates to something I've mentioned many times before. It is ironic that we name narcissists after a guy who couldn't stop looking at himself. Why, when it's the last thing you can possibly do with a Trumpist or a narcissist? You cannot get them to look at themselves. Would you look at yourself, you narcissist? You hear the irony in there? It's great. Okay, what are they looking at? They're not looking at themselves. That's certainly not what they're doing. They're looking at an idealization of themselves. And once they're addicted to that idealization, they start doing all sorts of crazy shit that they couldn't possibly justify without that blindness to who they are. It just occurs to me now, you know the term mind blindness. A it's a it's an inability to imagine that other people think differently than you. Um, Now, what motivates mind blindness? Well, there's been a lot of research on uh, human development that says that it kicks in at about age 4 or 5. You need what they call theory of mind, which is not a great name for it, I don't think. It means a conceptual theory that other people have other minds. Again, like the Dunning-Kruger, it doesn't pay attention to the motivated reasoning behind this, the willful desire to not attend to what other people think of us or what other people think. I mean, it's so self-satisfying to not have to care about that stuff. But it also includes, what is it then that motivates it? Just as this thought just came to me, mine blindness, M-I-N-E. That is, what's actually mine, I'm blind to. I wouldn't want to see the shit I'm pulling. I wouldn't want to see the crap I'm carrying around in myself. It's a blindness to oneself. It's basically autophobia, fear of self-knowledge. Um, a very important driver for humans. And I attend a fair amount of academic interactions, and a lot of them are in psychology or in politics or in something like that. And you can hear the autophobia in the room. It's the same thing you'd get when you watch someone like Dr. Ramani talking to people about what goes on with narcissists. It's present company accepted. That is, we're an exception. We're talking about the dumbasses out there, or the pathological people, or the feelings of other people. It's a non-inclusive we. If it gets to we at all, it's usually them. And this ends up being really important to me. It's why I keep on saying I wouldn't put it past me. Nothing human is foreign to me. I have to make it an inclusive we, and I also have to make it present company accepted. I have to accept that we are humans. So, and that is not where a narcissist, psychopath, whatever, is going. I did spend some of this week remaking a video I'll put out in probably tomorrow, that works with what's really going on with a dark triad personality, and how playing God is a great way to not introspect. God never introspects. So I think the fear of seeing yourself for real is a lot about sunk costs of identity. Thank you for that. That's an interesting idea. Let's play with this. Sunk cost of identity. So the sunk cost fallacy is the assumption that past investment, I think I can get this right. It's a funny thing. It's a little on edge, and I asked one of the big names in psychology about it because I was just really unclear on it. But that your past investment makes a difference in what you do today with your investment. So the idea that that I can't leave this because I've invested so much. No, from a strictly rational perspective, the only question is whether it's going to pay off in the future. It's not about whether you invested in the past. So that's, sunk costs are sunk is a standard line in economic theory. That is, you shouldn't pay any attention to them. That's sunk. You may have invested 20 years in this marriage, but the only question going forward is whether the prospects are good for the future. I think it's limited. I think that if you have spent 20 years in a marriage, it's worth acknowledging that you are in a groove. It may feel like a rut, and you should give it more time than simply deciding on a dime, no, this dog don't hunt, I'm leaving. Or at least that humans will do that. Is it a fallacy or not? I don't know. Here's another example of one of those. The gambler's fallacy is the assumption that if a dice has come up sixes 3 times in a row, it's not likely to come up again with a 6, because it's almost like the dice has memory. But that's limited too, because if someone does the same thing over and over, there's reason to believe, this is Bayesian statistics, reason to believe they'll do the same thing again. So it's different with living beings than with physical objects. Physical objects don't remember things. Living beings do. They have habits. So anyway, let's go back to the sunk cost fallacy. I think you're right about it here. What it is, and this is, so the parallel I draw here is to how gangsters will do some horrible crime that they could not possibly justify if they didn't stay in the gang. So it's a way of hooking people. When you think about AA has that whole step in the 12 steps where you go out and make amends for the things you did wrong in the past. That's an attempt to deal with the fact that you did all sorts of crazy shit when you were a member of this, well, when you were addicted to this drug. And this also came up this week because I think that it's useful for cult members to go through a phase where they simply scapegoat their leader, like they were host to some evil parasite. That kind of scapegoating makes sense as a way to get people through the sunk cost of identity. Is to say, so you go from saying, I'm MAGA all the way, to then saying, I was duped, to then saying, I'm dupable. So I'm about to do a presentation for a master's program in cult psychology, and someone suggested to me, don't talk about the third step. These are people who have come out of cults or some kind of abusive relationship. You don't want to get into victim blaming. And I had a good conversation with the head of the program 2 days ago. We talked about, I'm not victim blaming, but I do think that we have to eventually get beyond scapegoating on the cult leader, and recognize our own appetite to be manipulated. There's a lot of talk about brainwashing in cult psychology. I'm saying the complement to it is heart purging. When I joined the commune, which I still don't think was a full-on cult, though I was totally cultish about it, and many of us were, I felt total relief from ever having to doubt anything ever again. And if I don't recognize that, there will always be people who are very happy to manipulate me. And I will be manipulated if I do not ultimately recognize my own appetite for manipulation. The hungry are soon eaten. And so that's where I'm going. So responsibility gives us agency, says Jeff. Yeah, I would like it if you unpack that some. Let me understand what you mean. Let me do my unpacking of it. Remember, I strip away who said it. I strip away the rhetoric of it. I try to understand the idea based on the words and best guesses at what the words actually mean. Okay. So remember, I'm interested in agency from their very origins. A lot of my work is on pre-DNA struggle for existence. That is the first selves trying, the first trying beings. And we call that agency, okay? And I do not assume that agency starts with collectives. I think of agency as making functional interpretive effort. Let's see what it says. If we can admit that we're gullible, then we have a chance of not falling for the same con over and over. Amen. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, whether responsibility gives us agency is the way to frame that. I suggest you try right here, right now, rephrasing that in a way that captures it more directly. A lot of what we're doing with words is what I'm doing with the hat. When I start a sentence, you don't know where it's going, but little by little, it's almost like 20 questions, you get down to a focus point. So a lot of what goes into writing or speaking is disambiguation. How do you make it so the person knows which way you're going? How do you prevent misinterpretation of what you're trying to convey? Um, so let's take a look at how you would say that. And let me just finish out the thought here for a second. So all organisms have agency. So I don't think it gives us agency. Agency is there first. Trees have no responsibility to any other organism. I think that life starts with selfishness. That is, that organisms are struggling for their own existence, them and theirs. That's why I think that Trump is a highly evolved organism that is likely to terminate us if it's allowed to run wild as it does. But it's nonetheless, if you're talking about looking out for yourself and yours, that's something all organisms do. It's why we call them moral patients. We don't call them moral agents. Moral patients mean we have to be moral to them, but they don't have to be moral to us. We don't expect morality from other organisms. That's just not how we are about it. So if we take responsibility, then it is our choice. Good. So if I say I am dupable, I am gullible, there's a part of me that just wants more comfortable underwear. And I'll take the most comfortable, most pleasure affording underwear. Underwear is great for this, by the way. Fun Monsters, it's great because it's really where our sensitivity is greatest. Less so as we age, but it is certainly for a while a source of mesmerizing pleasure. And I do have to struggle with this issue because I think that this stuff applies as well to romantic relationships. I don't write about it as much as I could. I write about it more than I could if I was in a relationship. But no, it's a drugging effect. It can make you feel like a hero. It's got all the qualities that I would expect from one of these things that we do. So it's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, at this point, I want to take all of my pleasurable underwear from fiction, but that's not the case across, not all, but a lot from fiction, because I don't trust it in nonfiction. But a lot of people do trust it in nonfiction, in reality. They get married, they fall in love, they do all that sort of stuff. Okay. If we take responsibility, then it is our choice. Here's a good question that's always been on my mind, which is how much control do I have over my feelings? Plenty of evidence that I'm somnipotent. I have some power over my feelings. There are times when I can calm myself down or get realistic and overpower my feelings or calm them down. But I don't assume that I have that power over all. I call it robo-envy. That is wishing that I and other people were robots. You see it in all the psych literature. You see it in all the spiritual literature. Here's a rational argument for how you should feel. If you accept this argument, then you will feel that way. Maybe it's related to something I know from music. Other people know it from sports, which is you can understand a concept musically, but that doesn't mean it's in your fingers. That's a whole other long process to get it in your fingers. This is something that Aristotle dealt with in his Nicomachean Ethics. He's writing a book to his kid about how to deal with morality. And he starts the book by saying, morality isn't fun, but if you do a lot of practice, you can get in the groove of it, basically says. Feelings are the cause of fallibility. Thank you for that question. And we're not done with the other thing you were talking about, but no, I wouldn't say so. I would say that fallibility is built into the struggle for existence. That that plants are fallible, that single-celled organisms, that the first organism ever was fallible. Certainly not aware of its fallibility, but that's the problem with reality, with us interpreting reality. So try this out. Imagine that you're an organism that's just trying to stay afloat. Let's say you're an organism in a sailboat. This is a thought experiment. And you want to turn the sails so that you stay afloat. Okay. That's interpretation. You're interpreting or anticipating how the winds will change. So could you have the capacity, and you're doing this with no feeling. Just imagine that you're an organism that is, let's say you're a single-celled um, uh, bacterium. So bacterium swim towards sugar. They move up what they call a glucose gradient. They don't swim exactly. What they do is when there's no sugar around, they tumble. And then when there's a gradient from one side to the other of it, they have no feelings. There's no neuronal behavior here. But if there's a sugar gradient, then it responds, not just cause and effect. It's actually an organism interpreting. It responds by moving towards it. Okay? Well, you can get them tricked with fake sugar. So they're fallible. Feelings really amplify the shit out of fallibility. That's a great point. So I wouldn't say they're the cause of fallibility, but I would certainly say they are fallibility amplifiers. And this is the point that comes after Freud. Freud's saying the pleasure principle is that feelings are adapted to what's useful for us evolutionarily. And then he says, but not socially. I have these two buddies. One of them's a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient, and the other one is his wife. And his wife has this theory that all of life starts with feeling, with what they call yuck and yum. So yuck and yum were his terms for it, yuck and yum, and that life starts with feeling. And she goes around and she presents this thing at all sorts of conferences. And we argue about it because I don't buy it at all. I don't buy it. I think that a simple organism that doesn't have neuronal sentience doesn't have feelings. It has responsiveness, but it doesn't have feelings. And anyway, yuck and yum are not survival technique. The whole that something grosses me out doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad for me. And if something feels delicious, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good for me. I mean, after all, heroin or robotics, right? Okay. So Jeff, I love that you're playing with this stuff. And you are now playing in a realm that is error tolerant. You can make mistakes with your words. Lots of people do. It's error tolerant in two ways. One is you can blather and say stuff that doesn't make sense or feels like it makes sense but doesn't or is too vague for people to understand. But all I do all day is edit the shit I write. I have my thoughts. I put them out. I generate, I work on them. I have to keep on looking at the mistakes I make in writing. And I can afford to, whereas I couldn't in some professions. There are other professions where if you make mistakes, the consequences are dire. Mine is not one. I write and I keep on rewriting things. So I'm inviting you to take these ideas. These are good ideas. And then keep on playing with them. And part of the play is to see them from both sides, to think in stereo. So if we admit that we are gullible, then we have a chance of not good. We have a chance, you put that in there, of not falling for the same con over and over. Okay, I want to also unpack same con. Remember, I'm a guy who says that people will give up a dogma, but they rarely would give up a dogmatism. That would rarely give up their dogmatism because dogmatism is fun. It's addictive. You feel like a hero. You feel like you solve reality. So here's the next question I would ask on that statement. then we have a chance of not falling for the same con. Let's say for a con, because yeah, if I was if I dated a blonde who screwed me over, I might come away saying, no more blondes. When they say uh, uh, those who don't learn the lessons of history are forced to repeat them, which lessons? Um, Hitler and Stalin were both short guys with weird mustaches. Is that the lesson you're supposed to take? Never trust anybody who's short and has a weird mustache. I I don't think that's probably it. So let's set aside the same con thing, falling for cons over and over. If we admit that we're gullible, I love that you're saying that. It relates to something that I've thought for years about Plato's cave story. So that in Plato's cave story, and he kind of meant it this way, was you're living under delusion. You're gullible and you live under delusion, and somehow you escape the cave and you see the bright light of reality. You have a revelation, and then you're duty bound to re-enter the cave and rescue everybody from those delusions. That is the recipe for tyranny. And he wasn't exactly objecting to that possibility. He said, if you see the light, if you recognize that, if you see the light after having been gullible, it's what I call I once was lost, but now I'm blind syndrome. Then you are the hero. You've had the last epiphany you'll ever need. He didn't go that way. It's a Socratic dialogue. It's all about dialectics, which is about rethinking things. But the better way to leave the cave is to have the revelation that I am gullible. And that's what I think you're pointing to here. And I think that's a good point. Uh, I said to my buddy yesterday, yeah, I do want everybody to wake up. That is, I want everybody to get woke, but woke to the fact that they will be drowsy again that evening, that we are eternally gullible. Why are we gullible? Underpants. It's about underpants again. I'm gullible because I want comfort in my own skin more than I want to face reality. And so, once again, a lot of my work is on how to get it so we can have comfortable underwear in fiction that makes it so we can feel more comfortable dealing with reality after. As we zip up after our masturbation to a movie or a video game or our team winning or whatever, or church or whatever, and then we get back to reality. There's a new thought about that. So suppose you're a young person and you find a partner, a romantic partner who really loves you and really supports you. There are two moves you could make from that. One is that you take that as all the comfort you need and you get complacent. You don't go out and try to work because your girlfriend loves you or your boyfriend loves you. And the other is that you use that to go out and do the harder work. It can either motivate or demotivate work. And I think this is my biggest grievance about wealthy people, is that they're using it to become complacent when actually it's supposed to be used the other way. Same about famous people. Noam Chomsky was terrible this way. He used his fame as a claim of greater and greater authority, like he had solved reality. But no, you're supposed to go the other way with it. The more famous, the more popular you are, the more you need to doubt yourself. Okay, maybe you have a balance act of life between being in total darkness and being in total light. You can't see shit if it's too dark or if it's too light. That's an interesting idea. Let's see what we got there. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I like the idea that total light, by that, one way you could talk about it is uh, failure and success. Um, I don't know how to think about this. I mean, it reminds me of the resonance I have with the only Grateful Dead line I like, which is, I mean, that really moves me, is sometimes the light's all shining on me, other times I can barely see. Um, you can't see shit if it's too dark or if it's too light. I'm gonna be thinking about that one this week, Nils. I think that's an interesting idea. Um, Got to play with that one and see how to think about it. I do like the line from the Tao: "Success is as dangerous as failure. Hope is as hollow as fear." As you know, I'm rethinking my relationship with hope. I was for a while taking an overstep in the right direction. I was disparaging of hope. I Obviously I live on hope. Hope is another human move. It's a emotivation that can be good or bad. I don't think that it's exclusive to anybody. I don't think that hope is an Obama thing or a Trump thing. I think we all got to hope. Where we point it is a big question. But yeah, there's. But I did get something from hope is as hollow as fear, because the Tao is really trying to get us to be as realistic as we can be. Um, and it's saying don't be distracted by either of those. Um, Positive attitude. Yeah, I wouldn't say. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. So here's what I would do with a term like positive attitude. Um, what do we? It sounds good. It's got an exclamation point afterwards, so it's like Jeb Bush's campaign where he had his slogan was Jeb exclamation point. But what do we mean by it? Trumpists have an extremely positive attitude. Um, they're negative about the things I'm positive about. So, but that doesn't mean they're not positive about the things they're positive about. Um, you're talking about something that's really important. I think it relates to Nils' question, Nils' thing, which is too much darkness blinds you. Too much. I think what he means, metaphor. You got to unpack these metaphors too. What do we mean by darkness? Well, we can talk about good and evil. That's where they're usually talked about, dark and light. And a lot of people talk like there's darkness and lightness from the beginning. You hear it. It's the Manichaean side of what's in Christianity. That is, that God gave birth to both good and evil at the origins of the universe. So there's lightness and darkness. And no, I don't think of it that way at all. I mean, I think of morality as a language based thing that only humans do, because we can imagine what's good for other people in detail. We can imagine what's good for the world or for the seventh generation, all of that. So, yeah, I don't find much in the concept of positive attitude, maybe in part because I've dealt with a whole lot of people who think that a positive attitude solves everything. What I think of when I think about a positive attitude, it might be close to really comfortable underpants. The better you get at being able to tolerate these kinds of tire kickings of your own ideas, the better you get to be at them. I think. I could be wrong. Remember, everything I say could be completely off base. I have to assume that. But in order to play with these ideas, engage in serious play, you get really fussy. And I lose friends over how fussy I am over language. I want to understand what positive attitude means. So, Jeff, that's something actually for you, if you want to play with that one, comfortable underpants. Yes. And did you mean it half sarcastically when you said it, or did you mean it like a good thing? Um, how to get more comfortable with uncomfortable underpants? I mean, I think that this is just something you have to deal with as you get older. Is it's not your underpants; it's your body. It can be quite distracting. Um, uh, and I'm assuming there's going to come a time when I'm going to have a much harder time doing this work because my body's going to not be comfortable and my mind's going to slow down. I'm making hay while the sun shines. I'm going to be gone in minutes. I mean, it's ridiculous. Uh, it's like the balance act of staying between totally sure and being totally unsure. Yes, that's right. I'm with you there. Um, yeah. And that's why I'm a fallibilist. So the way I have so there is what I call the doctrine of foregone inconclusion, which is nobody knows anything, which is a very pat answer, or in reality, there's no reality. Um, uh, and That is not what fallibilism is. Fallibilism is no matter how confident I am in a bet, I remain still more confident that it is a bet. That's how I think fallibilism works. It doesn't make me mealy mouth. I'm full of confidence. I've had more than a few friends say to me, when I first got to know you, I thought you were a know-it-all prick. And then there were these experiences where I'd say something and you stopped and thought about it and you changed your mind. That's confusing. No, it is confusing. Yeah. Um, uh, that's exactly where I want to be. I want to be able to speak with confidence. I mean, can you imagine trying to beat the Trumpists without some confidence? You got to have some confidence. That's why I wear a cigar when I'm doing the words to try on Trumpies. One friend said, "I'm not much into. I'm offended by cigars. I associate them with pricks." No, I think that's actually why it's useful for me to do it because they don't. These guys are wusses. The only reason they think that they're thugs, street fighters. I mean, you should see the shit they throw at me. It's just so pathetic. Um, it is because we're so bad at it. We have to act more thuggish in response to these people. And I have no problem doing that. What they do unto me is fair game for me to do unto them. So I get I have range. Be really gentle, but I'm also really willing to be thuggish with them. Um, but they can change my mind, and I have to be able to respond quickly. So there's also a question about momentum on your confidences. Um, and again, there's this thing that we were talking about at the beginning, which is uh, how to be confident and introspective at the same time. Confident knowing its bets. I just think it's really important and really fun if you get there. Um, uh, Good. I'm glad Fun Monster. You don't know this, but anybody who gives me advice the way you do and says, what you should do? You should do this thing. Um, who's as curious and attentive and also foreign to me. You've had a different life from mine. When you give me suggestions, they haunt me, and I'm delighted that they haunt me. You suggested that I do a podcast where I deal with the everyday news. I'm probably not going to do that one, but I feel remiss for not doing it. So if I do anything, if my productivity actually yields something that is of value to you, fun master, it matters to me. It matters. You've ended up influencing me. That's the other thing that goes on in this work. Remember, I said you strip the authority, like the who said it, off of the quote. For example, there's this ridiculous quote that Einstein never said about the definition of madness is to try the same thing again. It's total bullshit. No, it's half true. That is, sometimes you should persist and sometimes you should give up. But he didn't say it. So whenever you get a quote from someone and you say, "Oh, he's smart," or "He's handsome," or "She's beautiful," um, strip that off too. I'm not paying attention to who's got a PhD and who doesn't. It's irrelevant. We're all humans trying to figure this out. We were all in diapers a few weeks ago. We'll all be dead soon. Ideas from wherever they come from. Let's see. Here lately, I've been trying to wrap my head around negative feedback aversion and the ties into fallibility, humility, totalitarian movements, trying to analogize living teleodynamics and society. Well, I'm delighted by that. It's a lot to take up with 1.5 minutes left, but let's see where we go with it. Great. Trying to wrap your head around things is all I'm talking about. And in a way, what we've been talking about here is negative feedback aversion is like someone giving you woolen underpants to put on. Woolen underpants to put on is extremely uncomfortable. Here's one thought I've had about it, but this is at the prescriptive end. It's not quite, it is related to teleodynamics in this way. All organisms have to prevent infection and and defection. That is, everything has to be aligned. You don't want cells turning into cancer cells. And you also have to protect against infection that will undermine you. You play that out in the emotional and psychological realm, and you get exactly what you get in human beings. Here's another relationship to it. And I can stick around for another minute or so, and I'll get to Ken too. When I was writing my book on teleodynamics, basically the origins of selves and trying, I noticed this thing. It was built on something Terry had said in passing, but it's that the job 1 and 2, they come together for any organism, is not replication. It's not making children. It's protecting against degeneration and regenerating what degenerates. And you end up with this paradox or ironic situation for an organism, which is, as one girlfriend once accused me, it's selective interaction. You got to keep out the energy that will degenerate you, but you got to take in the energy that you can use to regenerate yourself. Okay, what happens when you apply that at the level of vegetative sentience, neuronal sentience, conceptual sentience, body, heart, and mind? You get confirmation bias. That is, we are likely to take in the ideas we can use to regenerate our mojo, our confidence, and keep out the ideas that will degenerate our mojo. So from my perspective, the absolutism, this is a very simple explanation, is that decent folks recognize that confirmation bias is a problem that they have to manage. And assholes or absolutists or tyrants or totalitarians treat it as the solution to all of their problems. Confirmation bias is the solution to all of their problems. That's a basic way that I operationalize totalitarianism. Okay, so there's some parallels to play with, if you like, and let's talk more about that. I follow the idea that I need to be careful what I fight, because there's a great chance I'd become the thing I fight. Self-inspection is tough. Good, and also self-introspection. So people wonder whether I'm becoming MAGA Mike because I embody that person so convincingly. I mean, it's disturbing how well I play a dumbass. I think you're onto something really important. But I want to caution about one side of it. When I'm dealing with a Trumpist, I'm dealing with someone who will moralize at me, just blaring their police siren as loud as they possibly can to avoid introspection. They're not actually thinking about the words they're saying. It's all by mouth feel. If it feels good to say it, if it feels good in their underpants to say it, they'll say it. If it feels bad, they won't say it. If it sounds positive, it's about them. If it sounds negative, it's about you, that kind of thing. Now, I need full range if I'm going to fight with these people, if I'm going to disappoint them. That's my goal. I want to disappoint them. And I do not believe in the golden rule. I think it's not a rule, but I do believe that whatever I do unto others is fair game for them to do unto me, and vice versa. So if they're going to do that stuff, I want to fight skillfully. I'm not going to flail at them. I'm not just going to give myself the freedom to do anything because they're such bad people. I'm trying to be as strategic as possible. I want my skin outside the game. I don't want to be dealing with my underpants. I want to be strategic. I want to say what hurts them. Okay? And so to do that, I have to actually split myself to where I will say to them things that I would never say to a decent person. And I have to say things with a confidence that I actually don't claim for myself. So I have to split. There's a person here who's holding his own moral counsel, but there's also a person who's abusing these moralizing bullshit artists for thinking that I'd buy their moral counsel. They got a moral leg to stand on, these douchebags. Okay, so come back with these thoughts when we come back next week. I am becoming who I am becoming as I examine myself introspectively. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Shirley. Shirley is you're a presence. I feel you. I feel all you guys. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I'll be back next Saturday for those who want it. Thanks for joining me today.